Hey guys, my name's Crystal Kenny, and I'm in love with creating. All things artistic and imagination involved. I'm an American girl who chased her creative dreams all the way to Paris, France, making a living using photography. This podcast takes you inside the stories of all the artsy folks I've met along the way and gives you that extra push to discover your creative gifts. The desire to create is deeply inside each and every one of us, and I give you the tools and inspiration to find a new way of living a more creative life. This is La Vie Creative, the podcast. Claudine Hemingway is a descendant of famed writer Ernest Hemingway. We bumped into each other at a party and decided to team up and dive deep into French history, but with a twist, by bringing a spotlight to those lesser-known creatives in France. This is History with a Hemingway.
Welcome back to Paris History Avec Hemingway, and today we're doing the second segment of the Les Halles area. If you tuned in last week, we learned a lot of fun history about this area, and now Claudine's going to teach us even more for your next walk around Paris.
Yeah, so we left off last week about ready to talk about the Fontaine des Innocents, which we will talk about that and then head over to Saint-Eustache. But most people know this as the statue and the fountain that is there. It was very different when it was first created. Originally, before this was known, before we had the church of Saint-Eustache there was a different church there. It was the Église Saint-Innocent. It dates back to the 8th century that it was there. It was rebuilt over time. The Norman invasion basically completely destroyed it. The church was built again after that, and then it was later destroyed to create the market and also the wall in the 12th century. In 1182, Philip Auguste had it rebuilt again. It was moved a little bit, and there was a cemetery that was added. So if you know of another very popular place to visit in Paris, you're going to learn a little bit about that one with this one too. So the cemetery date back to the 5th century.
Wow.
And it was there, again, we're way outside the city at that point when it was, just on the Ile de la Cité. Well, this is so far away from being inside the city, which now it's considered like the center of Paris, which is so crazy.
That is weird.
Yeah. And so when it ended up being that it was attached to the church, and everything under Philippe Auguste, then he kept enlarging it. They sat outside the city walls, and it was the countryside, and it was the road to Saint-Denis that sat there. The cemetery was the final resting place of the Parisians from over 20 parishes in Paris. Many of the victims of the plague of 1348 were there, and more than 2 million people were buried, and many of them were just in mass graves.
What? That's so gross.
So gross. As the cemetery expanded, so did the buildings around it. In 1669, where there's an arcade. When you look at the fountain, there's an arcade that kind of stands right behind it. This was also a mass burial spot that was destroyed because the building was built on top of it. I mean, gross. And the building basically collapsed because underneath it, the soil obviously was filled with bodies. And so it wasn't exactly
horror movie. That's a horror
stable. Movie. Oh, it's totally a horror movie. Like there's a worse one too. In 1780, a building that had been built next to the cemetery, the wall that was built underground next to the cemetery collapsed.
Oh my gosh.
And the bodies, basically at this point, they're skeletons, but like rolled into those people's basement.
Oh my gosh. That is a horror movie if I've ever heard of one.
It is so gross. The walls around it were built 8 feet high, but because of the mass graves, it just basically things just kept, disintegrating because, when they bury these bodies in mass graves, they're covering with lye, which is supposed to break down the bodies, quickly. And it would but it'd leach into the soil, which would leach into food and the water. And so people were getting really, really sick. They decided to close it in December of 1780. And 6 years later, it was emptied. And so, where most of those bodies went?
Père Lachaise.
The catacombs. The catacombs. So when you go to the catacombs, which I have not done because, again, remember my constant talk of rodent fear. But people have told me they've never seen one down there, but I still won't go. But you could think of like all those heads and those body and those bones, maybe they rolled into somebody's basement.
I mean, that makes me think like when you're down in the catacombs, are you still breathing in lye or whatever?
No, I don't think, because they cleaned all of those. We're going to do an episode here in a few weeks talking about the catacombs. And when they moved them, they actually like cleaned them all. So when they were stacked there,
cleaning the bones.
I know, but at that point, they're like, there's nothing on it, it's just the bone, but still gross. I mean, that's what it's like. Everybody wants to go down there and see that. Like, it's this kind of like novelty, but I'm kind of like, you're just looking at like millions of people that lived.
Yeah, it's real creepy. I've been like 3 times because when they have visitors, they always want to go. And I'm like, I don't want to go anymore. You're going on your own.
It's probably one of those places in Paris that I'm just probably not going to see. And it's also kind of like, once you go 10 feet, like, I mean, how much more do you need to see?
Yeah, no more bodies.
Yeah. They ended up, taking them all out of there and moving them. And so the fountain itself that is there, it was moved. It was originally just 3 panels, and it was against the wall of the Saint Innocent Church. And I saw some really cool drawings of what it once looked like, and I'll put those online. It was kind of cool because it was almost like each one of the pieces was almost like if you unfolded it and placed it against a wall. It was built in 1260. Nothing remains of the actual original one, but Pierre Lescaut and Jean Goujon, who also did a lot of the stuff in the Louvre, they were commissioned to recreate the fountain based on those original sketches of what it looked like. In 1785, the fountain was removed from the church. The church was later destroyed. Architects Legrand and Pouet decided to turn it into 4 sides. So a 4th mirrored copy of the other one was created. It was done by the sculptor Augustin Pajot, using basically ideas from the other ones. 4 lions were also added. The lower bas-reliefs were replaced as they began to show that water was running through them, because it's kind of it's a square and the water comes out through the middle of it. But you could also see some of the original pieces of the bas-relief in the Louvre, which I was super excited to find one day. The entire fountain moved to this spot in 1860. They ended up putting it on the kind of step-like fountain base that went down, and that was done by Gabriel Daviau, who also did the green benches and other things we've talked about. But it's really cool. It's supposed to be being restored this year. The city put a bunch of money into it because it was kind of not doing so great. So when you go there, it might be covered up. I don't think it's covered up quite yet, but it could be covered up at some point this year for them to redo it.
That'd be good. They need to fix that thing up.
Yeah, but it is pretty cool. Right outside of that is one of my favorite little markers, and then we'll turn around and go to Saint Eustache. But if you kind of walk through that colonnade that you see to the left of the fountain, look down on the ground. And when you look down, look for it's going to be different color. There is a very dark gray, blackish, what looks like a crest. And this marks a spot that on May 14th, 1610, the day that Marie de Medici was crowned the day before at Saint Denis. And this little spot, the street is called the Rue de la Ferronnier. Henry IV was there, and he got stopped. He was on his way to go see his buddy, the Duc de Sully, who lives at the Arsenal, which we're also going to talk about in a week. But he got stuck in a traffic jam of carts filled with hay and wine, got stuck in a traffic jam. He was in his carriage, and a gentleman, a Catholic zealot who named Francois Ravaillac, jumped up onto the carriage, and with a knife, he ended up stabbing the king and killing him. He stabbed him in his chest between his 2nd and 3rd ribs, puncturing his heart. Ravaillac had been thinking about attacking the king for many years. He believed Henry wasn't doing enough for the Catholics and wanted him to fight the Protestants some more. Henry died quickly but he was rushed back to the Louvre, where the doctor said it was too late and he was already gone. Ravaillac was quickly arrested at the scene and taken to the Hotel de Ritz on the 3rd day. 3 days later, he was taken to the conciergerie, where there was a trial that lasted 10 days on May 27, 1610, at the Place de la Grave, which is Place de Hotel de Ville now. He was killed. He was tried for regicide, which means you killed the king. And how he was killed was 4 horses, one each was attached to the end of each limb by a rope. And then they said, go. And the horses basically tore him apart.
Yeah, did they do it on the Pont Neuf, or that's just where he killed?
No, they did it in front of what is the Hotel de Ville now.
Okay, but he killed him on the Pont Neuf, right?
No, he killed him right by the fountain.
Oh, okay. I always thought he killed him on the Pont Neuf.
No, not on the Pont Neuf. Right there at the Fontaine des Innocents, right outside the colonnade.
Oh, okay.
And so that's where I was saying there's a marking on the street in marble of the exact spot where he was killed.
I never noticed it. I'm gonna have to go look now.
Yeah, and then above the colonnade, there's a little plaque with a little profile of Henry IV. But the other thing about him is that when Henry IV was killed, he was put on display for a day. Then he was in the Louvre. Then he was replaced with a wax effigy, a full-size body wax effigy of him. He was placed, this wax effigy was placed over the coffin that he laid in. It was in what is the Salle des Caryatides now. And they would sit there for 3 weeks. They would set it up for lunch and dinner every day, and 120 people would eat with him. They would change his clothes each day as well. And so I've been obsessed with this whole wax effigy thing. And I've never been able to find out like who did this. Like, did, the first Madame Tussaud do this? But I was recently at the Carnavalet, and I should post a video of this when you're listening to this. But it is not the wax effigy from the one that was in the Louvre, but it's a different one. And I don't know what I was thinking. I was thinking it would be like this weird jiggly jello waxy thing. But it's like, it's pretty amazing. It's like very hard wax. And it looks like him. It looks just like him, and it's, painted, and it's color of his skin, and, it's got eyes and like, little creases by his eyelids. And I was like, just about died when I saw that one in there.
Can you imagine eating dinner with that thing and like changing clothes? Like what the?
No, today's episode is all about all these gross.
It's all like dead bodies.
All these dead bodies. But it was like, it's just, I hope embalming was good back then, because for 3 weeks he's in this box.
Yeah, what a kind of smells coming out of there. Gross. Yeah.
No, thank you. At least he wasn't like rolling out of it like at the cemetery. But we'll turn around and go over to Saint Eustache, which is an amazing church. It is absolutely humongous, but it is not, of course, the biggest church in Paris is Notre Dame. The second biggest is Saint-Sulpice, but it is still very massive. It was built between 1532 and 1640. It was replaced replaced a church that was built there in 1213 that was dedicated to Saint Agnes until 1303, when it changed to Saint Eustache. Saint Eustache was a martyred saint who died in the year 118. He once saw a vision of a stag with a crucifix in his antler. A depiction you could see high up on the northern side of the church. So last week when we told you about that cute little street, Rue de Jour, when you were back there, look up to one of the peaks of the church, and you could see this stag with the cross in his antlers.
Go back.
It's really cool. So definitely take your camera and get a good zoom in on that. The church has 110-foot ceilings, which is why it feels like it is so huge. It is filled with light and art, and the chapel of the tombs that are there. The ceiling is higher than that of Notre Dame. So I think that is why it feels so huge. After many delays, it was finally consecrated on my birthday, April 26th, different year, 1637. But the facade has been rebuilt many times after it's been demolished, and they're having to replace and restore the facade again right now. Jean-Baptiste Colbert, who was, a very close minister to Louis XIV, he was a parishioner there. He spearheaded the project by architect Louis Laveau to help restore it. It is a blend of flamboyant, Gothic, and Renaissance architecture. Inside, the chapels are really, really cool to see. And there's one of them that's kind of one of my favorite little things to take people to and show. On the north side, you have quite a few different ones, and they're also filled with some amazing art. There's the first one when you come in the door. From the north side, is the Saint Jean Baptiste chapel. It has a copy of Rubens' painting of the Adoration of the Magi. There's also a Leon Reiser painting that's a version of Pain, and there's also a statue of that. There's a chapel of Saint Joseph with the paintings of Simon Vouet, with it, which includes the Resurrection and the Assumption. There's a chapel dedicated to Saint Eustache, and at the transept, they just have been restoring pieces of the church in the transept, and on the south side is been completely cleaned up and redone. It is really cool. When I was recently there, I looked down onto the floor, and there looks like there's pieces from what might have been former like tombs, like the stones that were with their names on it from cemeteries. It looks like some of those are on the ground, and I took a bunch of pictures and made notes, and I have to see what I could find out about that, which I think is really cool. In the Saint Louis chapel, there's a painting by Felix Barrier of Saint Louis praying at the cross. There's also one, of course, to Saint Geneviève and Saint Vincent de Paul. So you kind of have all of the saints covered there. There are more paintings by Rubens in the when you're looking towards the Chapel of the Virgin. To the left, there is a really cool little chapel, and there is the tomb of Jean-Baptiste Colbert. It was done by Antoine Cosivot and Jean-Baptiste Touby. Colbert, as I mentioned, was very close with Henry the 14th. He was a comptroller, and he was the one who also spearheaded a lot of these things that we love in Paris today. He was the one who kind of pushed to have Nicolas Fouquet arrested, who owned the Vicomte. But he loved this church, and so that's where he said he wanted to be buried. It is a huge, basically it looks like his casket's laying inside, and on top of it is a statue of him kneeling with his hands in prayer, and he is praying to the order of the Holy Ghost. And then on either side of him are two allegories, one of fidelity and one of faith. There used to be an angel that he was praying to, but after the revolution, that piece was lost. And when you look at it, I really don't know where this piece would have been, because I don't know where they actually have the space for it. But it is really cool. Alexander Lenoir, one of my favorites, he's the one who saved it from being fully destroyed during the revolution. But I always think when I always see Colbert, I think of Stephen Colbert.
Yeah, I would say Colbert was same.
Yeah, and I love Stephen Colbert, so I'm like, oh, maybe they're related, but I don't think they are. The Chapel of the Virgin in the center was built in 1640. Most of the decor was destroyed during the Revolution, but inside of the paintings are really amazing. The Virgin and Child in the center was done by Jean-Baptiste Pigalle, who also did the one at Saint-Sulpice. The three large paintings were by Thomas Couture, who also trained Manet. They are all different stories of the life of the Virgin. Couture was an artist in his own right. He has some very huge paintings of his that are in the Orsay, including the one we one day talked about that is the basically called the Roman Orgy. That huge one that's in the very center. So it's almost like the transept of the Orsay, right when you're kind of going in. And then there's this massive painting on the right. He painted that. It's 11 by 10 feet and was painted in 1847. But it is definitely the kind of a bit of a Roman orgy there. He was the one where he was actually, Morisot was sitting for him, and Manet ended up meeting her again after he met her first in the Louvre.
What? It's all connected.
It's all connected. But one of my favorite little chapels in here, and maybe one of my favorite chapels in any church of Paris, and this is just such a French thing. And anytime I take people for walks around the Marais, we always have to pop in here. But when you walk in the door from the south side and you go to the second chapel on the left, it is the chapel of Saint-André. It is, but inside there, and look up at the stained glass window and look closely at it. The Corporation of the Charcuteries was formed in 1476, one of the most important in France and still is to this day. But when it was Leal and it had the butchers there, at one point, this rumor was getting spread around that they were maybe butchering more than just pigs or beef.
Oh, no.
Which, basically our gory episode today, you just guess what that was.
Keep it going.
To win back the esteem of the people, they decided that they needed to give some money back and do some charitable acts. So they ended up giving a bunch of money to the church, to Saint-Eustache, which is there basically, in their backyard. In 1944, many, many years later, they decided to have a stained glass window created. And so when you look at the stained glass, at the very top of it, there's the seal of Paris and the coat of arms of the guild, which includes 3 sausage links and a pig.
Of course it does.
Yeah. So, but no, so I don't think I noticed just a freestanding foot. Saint Antoine is also in the stained glass. He is known as the patron saint of butchers. He is there with a pig at his feet, and then the chef is presenting him with a tray of pork, and you see more sausage links hanging down there. Each year around November 17th, a procession is dedicated to Saint Antoine and held in Saint-Eustache. It's usually on the Saturday before, around the 17th. And all of the charcutiers gather and present their offerings to the saints and all in attendance. So if you are a big fan of saucisson, I would go to Saint-Eustache around that Saturday of November 17th, and just, have a few samples. It'd be like going to Costco.
Time to barbecue in the church.
Time to barbecue, but it's really cool. I just love how French is that, to have a stained glass window and chapel dedicated basically to sausage.
When I went in there the first and last time, that church is incredibly beautiful. I don't know why it took me time to go in there, but I was really questioning all the meat stained glass. I'm like, what is going on here? And even the deer on the outside, I'm like, what is that about? Answering all my questions now.
Yeah, all of your questions. There's a few other things in there that's really cool. Like you have a chapel that is before, it's on the side where Colbert is. And in that chapel is a really, it's very contemporary compared to everything else you see in the church and inside of most churches. But it is kind of a 3-part kind of pounded metal screen. And it was done by Keith Haring. It's known as The Life of Christ by Keith Haring. It was inaugurated on December 1st, 2003, which is the International Day of Fight Against AIDS. It was the last piece that he actually designed before he died on February 16th, 1990. It was offered to the city by Haring in 1988, and then that's when he created after that. He worked on the model for 2 weeks before he died, and he never saw the finished piece that was finally created. It was then added to the church, as I said, in 1990, but it's pretty cool because it was kind of the last piece that he did. In the very center of it, God extends his arms out. It's also a take on the judgment and the life of Christ. It's there with everybody on either side. So when you see the fronts of Notre Dame and stuff, and you see the Last Judgment, there's always the people that look like devils on one side and the people that were the good people on the other side. And so the screen is a little bit like that too. Another thing that people love to see in that church as well is there is it's kind of a bas relief in one of the chapels on the same side as the Keith Haring. That is a bas relief, and it kind of basically shows you what it was like when it was Leal. And so it's all of these people that are the merchants there, and they're the ones that are selling everything. But it's been just recently, just within the last couple of weeks, taken out to be restored. So if you're going to go in probably the next year, it's not going to be there. But it is kind of cool because it just kind of harkens back to what that area once was so known for. But they have redone the 2 transepts. The stained glass windows are gorgeous. And it is funny, the chapels, most churches like Notre Dame and Saint-Sulpice, The chapels are all very uniform. They're all kind of the same side. The one at Saint Eustache, which probably adds to the appearance of it being so large, is some of them are only like at one point of the church, there may be only like 2-3 feet deep.
Wow.
So it kind of goes around almost as a circle around it. So when you get to the ones at the very, very end, that's by the facade entrance, those ones are like a 1.5 feet deep.
Yeah, I mean, you have to go to this church. I feel like it's the most underrated church in Paris.
It is really gorgeous. What I went there, I was supposed to go, I was going to Paris, 3 days after the fire of Notre Dame. And I was so excited because I was going to go and see the procession of the crown of thorns at Notre Dame. And, I'm not Catholic. I wasn't raised Catholic, but, just on a historic level, I really wanted to see that and to see it on the Good Friday and everything. And then as I'm watching Notre Dame burn down, I'm like, this is probably not going to happen now.
Yeah.
And then it's a week before Easter. So when, we obviously couldn't do Easter inside Notre Dame. And so the big city event was at Saint Eustache. And so I got there early that day and, so did thousands of other people. And I stood there in line and it was able to go inside and got a seat. The Archbishop of Paris was there. The mayor of Paris was there. A bunch of pompiers were there. So it was, and it's like, I don't even know what they're doing because I feel like I'm practically honorary Catholic because I've been in these churches so much. When they stood up, I stood up. When they sat down, I sat down. Like, I just kind of, I didn't do the communion, but I ended up like crying because it was just so emotional as they were talking about Notre Dame. And obviously it's all in French, but just the amount of people were there. The Archbishop comes walking down with this whole procession and, there's incense and all of this stuff. And I was just like, I don't even know what was happening, but I'm very moved by this. And as I walked out, I ended up actually walking right next to the Archbishop in his fancy little, robe and hat. And I looked over and I kind of was like obviously tearing up and he grabbed my arm, like just on my forearm. And he just said something like, he's like, it's okay, my child. And I was just like, I've been blessed. And then recently, like in the last year, he had to step down from his role because they found that he had a friendly relationship with a woman of the church, but not like sexually or anything, like, and everybody knew about it. But they found these emails of them, they're just like chatting and nothing, like you could see the emails online. There's nothing salacious about it, but he ended up stepping down. And so I felt like I lost my friend.
He just
I was like,
friendship. Oh, come on.
Yeah, I was like, that's my friend, the Archbishop. And I can't
He's got
even
a lot of friends.
I know I can't even like Michel it begins last name. So we're such good friends. I forgot his last name. But it was just such a cool thing. And then when you walked out, they gave you a little candle, and it's just in one that like the candles you could buy at the churches for a couple euros. They gave you a candle when you walked out, and on the outside it says Saint Eustache, and then the date of Easter and stuff. And I still have it. And it's one of those things that I'm definitely it's definitely coming back to Paris with me.
Yeah, I like how you're bringing on Claudine's moving here, guys. She's full time. Get ready.
Well, when you listen to this, I will be there.
Full time.
I will be there. So, yeah, I know that it does kill me though. There's so many things that I've purchased and like brought back or shipped back, and now they're making their return voyage.
Just traveling all around.
Somebody needs to do, and I've looked into this, and there are a few, but they're not really inside Paris. But somebody needs to have like kind of in the US, there's so many storage facilities. Yeah. But even do it where you could like rent one that's kind of almost like the size of your locker in high school.
Yeah.
That you could just have if you're coming back and you just leave things like your toiletries and stuff like that. And then you just rent it. And then when you come back, you just go get it.
I mean, it's not a bad idea. That's the next idea. Claudine's going to start the storage units.
Yeah, that and nachos. I'm going to import Tillamook cheddar cheese.
And then don't even bother with nachos here, man. They're always nasty.
But they don't call they're chip. What they call nachos, what I've discovered in Europe and England is chips and dip.
Yeah, they do have nachos at some of the like Irish bars and stuff, but they're gross. Like the cheese is, I don't even know what it is. Don't
No,
order it. I mean, obviously we didn't move to Paris for the nachos, but sometimes you
no.
miss them, you miss
But
them.
that is, and when before I was leaving for Paris, my friends, I had to go like 3 times. Like I had to go get my nacho fix because I won't have nachos anymore. Not the right way. But I just might have to. My friend of mine said that when he comes, he'll just bring me a big brick of Tillamook cheddar cheese. And I am one that only likes French cheese, period. But when it comes to nachos, it has to be the Tillamook cheddar cheese, and it's from Oregon. So
You are so correct on that. And Landon brings cheese back for us. The Velveeta. We do nachos
oh,
with Velveeta too. I
I
mean,
can't
that's
do
chemical
Velveeta.
cheese, but America.
It does melt, but yeah, I can't do the velvet. Somebody said that to me. I was like, nope, can't do it.
Very Portland of you.
Yeah, but the French don't understand how, because American cheddar cheese is colored,
Mhm.
and the French are like, what? And there's is it mimollet? That's the French
Yeah.
cheese that looks kind of it's even kind of a brighter orange,
Yeah.
but it doesn't melt the same. It's all about the melting. They don't have the cheese that melts like that.
I mean, you're just gonna have to start a cheddar cheese business while you're starting your storage locker business.
My storage locker business and doing tours and everything else.
You're a busy woman. Busy woman.
Plenty of time.
Well,
So if you'd like to invest in my nachos and storage company,
that sounds horrible. Nacho storage.
maybe I could do the nachos from the storage facility.
I think we're getting real creative. I gotta have you on the creativity podcast.
Again, we
Again.
can talk about my nacho
Your
obsession.
nacho storage.
Yeah.
All right, guys, we'll head over to ClaudineHemingway.com for some nacho storage information as well as history. And don't forget to tune in next week.
Thank you for listening to Paris History Avec a Hemingway. If you want to find out some more, you could always find me on my Instagram page, Claudine Bleu Blanc Rouge, and that's BLEU, as in the French way to spell it. And each day I post a daily history lesson about a person or a place or something in Paris, or it's lots of fun facts. And then also at ClaudineHemingway.com, where you can also sign up for my newsletter there.